Hello, hello, hello. Hey, everybody. If you are around, of course, I would love to have you join me. And I'm going to be sharing with you all how to really change the psychology around being stuck so that you can start making those sales that you really desire. Those sales that are consistent, that align with how you desire to work, so that your business model is shifting. You're getting out of that cycle of sacrificing, overworking, pulling your hair out, sleepless nights, sometimes not even eating because you're working so much, and just that constant obsession and analysis, wondering where the heck your sales are coming from. So I'm just going to check get my PowerPoint on for you all here. All right. Okay, cool. All right, so, oops, now I can't see you because my PowerPoint's in my face. All right, so why this is important. So, and we'll share some stories about my own journey. Is, of course, you know, there are so many coaches, so many entrepreneurs, and the problem is not a lot of them are making a lot of money. Because, you know, there's lots of reasons, but I'm going to get into the deeper reasons. But of course, in this industry, you know, there's a lot of shortcut marketing I'm sure you all have been exposed to that makes you think it's super quick and super fast, and all you need to do is follow their formula. Actually, that doesn't work. And when you get caught in that cycle and you are thinking, you know, you just need to follow certain steps or follow a certain coach's guidelines or template or formula or whatever, what happens is when it doesn't work, because, you know, you might have some success and it works, you know, initially, what happens when it stops working is then, of course, the tendency is to go into analysis, brainstorming, figuring it out. And the easiest place to go for that is your strategy, is to go with logic. You know, it must be just my strategy. Maybe I just need to change that so I can get in front of more people, I can get more leads, get more followers, whatever it might be. And that actually isn't what's going to make this change. So if you've been there, and, you know, when I was going through this, you know, in the beginning of my business, it was easy to go after strategy because strategy doesn't take a lot of emotional depth. I mean, because logic is, you know, let's just fix it, let's just do the thing. And those things are easy. It's just taking the actions, you know. So I started, you know, going to networking events. I started creating, you know, I can't even tell you, you know, over 30 different, you know, freebies and, you know, things to add value, things to help my clients see, you know, how I can help them, you know, landing pages. I even messed around with Facebook ads, you know, changing, you know, where I was showing up and how I was showing up and what I was saying, messaging. I mean, all this stuff. I mean, it was nonstop. And all of that keeps you really busy and keeps the logic in your mind thinking you're doing what it takes. But what you're really doing is just perpetuating the cycle of struggle. So if you've been there, I feel you, because I've been there too. I'm just going to see if I can change this slide. So often what happens, of course, and that's what happened to me, is like, oh, this kind of sucks. Like, this isn't fun anymore. You know, I'm, you know, being in that place of just run. And this place of run and hustle is very much, you know, idolized. If you know, have seen any of the gurus, like, that's all they talk about is like hustle, like get up and go and just don't stop. And that can leave you in that place again where you're really disconnected because it's all coming from the head and just taking actions. And there's no connection between, you know, how is this connected to you, which I'll get into. And when you're not connected to you and how you naturally work and what your unique gifts are, you are really uninspired and, you know, really bored. So of course, then you don't really want to continue chasing and working on your marketing and working on, you know, getting out there and showing up more often, because you got nothing left. I mean, the engine is empty when you're working all the time and sacrificing and not even seeing a whole lot of outcome for all that sacrifice, which is the worst, right? So you can see this picture here, you know, if you can read it, it says alternate route, more difficult. many of us have chosen the more difficult route, which, like I've already talked about, just analyzing everything, working on your strategy, trying a new strategy, basically just working more, sacrificing more, and not actually getting, the benefit, the joy, the inspiration, the connection to your gifts and what you're here for and how you are meant to serve. So we, don't have to continue to choose the more difficult route. So what I'm going to be sharing with you and how you can change this up is I'm going to be sharing with you in depth the psychology behind being stuck, where it comes from, because that is really what is driving, the default brain wiring, which is driving the behavior, which of course your behavior is what is creating your results. And I'll be sharing how you can, working with the right mentor, really start to uncover what your unique gifts are. Because when you are working from your unique gifts, that's when you break out of this cycle of sacrifice and struggle and out of that up and down or even inconsistent sales and get to that place where sales start to come to you. So this is one of my favorite quotes, and it's the idea, you might hear some coaches saying, and I've heard this before, don't even, the past is the past, just leave it alone. You don't need to go there. What happens is a lot of what happened in the past, like I mentioned, it has influenced how your brain is wired. And when you aren't aware of that, you are going to continue the same patterns from the past, even though you obviously are not a child anymore. And you can make different decisions and create different outcomes. If that default brain wiring is still activated, you're going to be, having similar, behaviors as you had in childhood, even though, of course, you're not a child. But you're going to be seeing, what I'm talking about was you're not getting the success that you desire, not getting the sales that you desire. So this quote from the Gnostic Gospels talks about, the need for bringing forth that which is often hidden, that which is we often have denied or suppressed or don't think is important. And we just want to the past is gone. When you don't bring forth that part of you, when you're hiding a part of you, that part of you will destroy you. But when you bring it out and you uncover everything, there's nothing left to hide. There's no shame. There's no guilt. There's no fear around whatever happened in the past destroying you anymore, because when you bring it to light, then you see it doesn't have the power to destroy you. What is destroying you is running away from it. So like this quote says, when you bring forth that which is within you, that will be your salvation. That is what will set you free. And that is critically important, because what is driving your behavior, if it's not uncovered and acknowledged, that will continue to drive your behavior. So I'm going to show you where this comes from. And what this is about really is, the cycle of socialization. Oops, I forgot to change the slide. Okay, so this framework is just like the model of the world. So the first part, the blue circle you can see is, you're born. And you're born with nothing, like a clean slate. You have no judgments. You have no shame. You have no, fear. You are, complete and whole. As a child, you have no prejudgments of people or any stereotypes, any biases, nothing. And that part of you still exists. That part of you, that is the divine part of you that is, knows you are complete and whole. What happens is, no matter where you grow up, you're going to be put into, and this is the green arrow, that first socialization. So, whatever the beliefs of your parents were, whatever their parents' beliefs were, all those patterns and values that have been, coming up through generations are now passed on to you and some of those are obviously positive, obviously, what is good, good as far as you don't, kill people and you don't lie. And some of those things are not so good, and those are the things that we're going to start to uncover. Then, of course, all of this is reinforced. This is the yellow circle, where, you maybe are part of a, religious institution. Obviously, you go to some sort of educational institution You are, watching certain things on the television, surrounded by social media, listening to what's happening on the radio. What are different celebrities doing? What are different song lyrics starting? What messages are they giving you? What are the cultural, norms within which the community in which you lived? And that could be within the community, it could be within even, in the United States. In certain states, there's different norms, and of course within the country. So obviously all of those have an impact on what you believe is true about the way the world works and about who you are. Then this orange arrow, put my glasses on to read it. All of those things that you learned from childhood, from your parents, from educational institutions, from religious institutions, also from groups. If you're on any teams growing up, sports teams or, Boy Scouts, any types of groups, Girl Scouts, or any types of organizations, all of what you learn in there then is going to be reinforced. And how is reinforced is you are punished, and this could be in the form of being ridiculed or rejected for certain behaviors. And then you're also rewarded for other behaviors. So many times within the household, you start to learn quite quickly what are the things that you need to do in order to, get approved of, to feel like you belong, and what are the things you need to avoid doing, because those things will result in punishment. And then the red circle, all of that, all this whole cycle, what happens is, you start to either become silent because oh, I can't talk about those things. I get punished for talking about those things. You either can become ignorant about certain things because you're only, exposed to certain things. A lot of times this results in high stress, a lot of self-hatred, a lot of anger, a lot of guilt and shame. A lot of violence comes from this. So at that place, and if you can see the core, the white circle, that, the core of all of this is fear, which, is perpetuated through ignorance and confusion and insecurity about how does the world work, and what is my place in the world, and what do I need to do in order to belong, and what do I need to not do in order to not belong. And so this is the point at which, there's two options. This is the purple arrows. You can do nothing, which many people do, like don't make waves, just, promote the status quo. And then unfortunately what happens then, if you don't do anything different, you do nothing, you feed that cycle. So if you have kids, you start to teach them the same things that you were taught. They become socialized even more, by other relatives, by teachers, by the rules, models, the way the world is being taught to them, of how the way the world works and their role in it. But the option here is, and this is where the psychology of change comes in, is not taking the easy route, which is the doing nothing route, is challenging this model of the world, challenging what you believe about yourself and what you believe is possible for you, educating yourself more, doing more research, changing your consciousness and finding different ways to change your consciousness, to raise your consciousness, to engage in critical awareness around the media, around educational institutions, religious institutions, celebrities, songs, all that stuff, and really taking a stand about doing something different and about reframing how the world works and reframing your role in that. And I have to say, this is not an easy road. And there's lots of examples of people who challenged the status quo and who were ridiculed, who were rejected. This has resulted in, some people being even killed, like we've seen this. And so this is the challenge in this, and this is the challenge in changing this, is that if there's this default pattern in our brains, if it's not safe to go against the status quo, that we will, be punished or, have the threat of violence, or we might be harmed for going against the status quo, then what the brain does is it forms a pattern of protection. So it starts to wire, what needs to happen in order to keep you safe, to keep you protected. And many times that means, stayed in the status quo. And the status quo is going to be different, So it could be that in your family, the status quo was, it sounds mean, but like, don't, shut up, like be quiet, like don't talk about anything that is going to upset anyone. So it could be very conflict avoidant. It could be, the status quo was do everything, like people pleasing, do everything to make sure that everyone else is okay and that you became like the peacemaker in the family. Or it could have be, that the status quo was, sacrifice, which is, obviously all these show up in business. Sacrifice, work hard, you can't ever have what you want without, of course, having to suffer for it first. And there might even be, some events that are, they call them pairing, where maybe you get what you want, but it's paired with some sort of pain. And so then your brain thinks, well, it's not safe to have what I want because then I'm going to experience pain. So the thing about this is if you don't know this, then of course the ignorance part, right? You repeat it. And then you wonder, why do I end up in, jobs that I don't like? Or why do you end up in relationships that aren't satisfying? Why do you end up, in a business that is not creating the type of income that you desire? Why are you not attracting the types of clients that you desire? All of this is rooted in how you were raised, and not just by your parents, of course, by society, by media, by religion, by culture. So many things go into this. And that is what shapes how your brain functions, what your brain thinks is safe for you, because the brain has, it's brilliant, right? So it sees what needs to happen for you in order to, not be harmed. And of course, as adults, you can look back and see, of course, you're not going to be harmed for getting what you want. Of course, you're not going to be harmed for having an opinion. But if that old belief system is ingrained, then your brain will find situations to reinforce that belief. So you'll find yourself not being able to get what you want, not be able to speak how you want to speak or share your opinions, because your brain still thinks it's not safe. So if there's any questions, let me know. So the point of this, of course, is when your brain perceives danger, then it, of course, is going to be on the survival mode for most of your life. And so you'll keep attracting situations that prove it's not safe or prove what you need to do in order to be safe. And again, this is sometimes counterintuitive, because what your brain might think it needs to be safe is to struggle. So even though struggle isn't what you want, if your brain has been imprinted to think struggle is what keeps me safe, then you will continue to struggle. So this is why it's so important to become aware of this and to, of course, work with someone that can guide you to uncover this and not get stuck in it. And this is the thing about, some of my beefs I have with psychology is that sometimes, in therapy, you might just stay in the past and it's just, that's not the place that you want to swim around. You want to, go on a little exploration and then get the gold and then bring the gold back. You don't want to hang out in the darkness, because that's not going to help. Obviously you want to be a functioning adult and contributing to society and having, engaging relationships and be doing work that you find meaningful. And you can't do that if you're just hanging out in the past. So it's going into the past to find the bits that need to be shifted and find the gold in those bits, and then bringing that to the present so you can create a different future, of course. So this part of, changing for the future is changing those default wiring in your brain so that you're willing to risk rejection, that you're sourcing your identity from a different place, that your identity is no longer contingent on having to belong and having to be safe and protected. You start to create an identity where you are able to voice your opinions boldly, that you are able to take a stand. And how this happens, and this is why, again, you need a mentor to help you with this, is you start to see within that past experience, like I mentioned, the gold parts of it. And the gold parts of it is how did that shape you in forming your perspective on the world, And inherent in that is your unique gifts that you were born with, that were, kind of honed and continue to be refined as you grew up. And those, past experiences are what solidify that. And those gifts are what you want to be sourcing your identity from. Not your pain, not your brokenness, not your stuckness, like the identity of, being a victim or helpless. Like, that is not the identity. That is not your true identity. Like I mentioned, when you're born, like, you're whole, complete, like perfect. You don't have any of these issues. And that part of you is still within you. And so you want to source your identity from that place. And that place is the place that gives you that confidence and the courage to risk rejection, to risk not belonging, and to have the faith and trust in yourself to create something different. And then when you, of course, start to shift from this place and source your identity from a different place, you do start creating different experiences, because you're changing how you see yourself. You don't see yourself anymore as having to be protected, and it's not safe to not belong. And, all your actions are just, seeking approval and acceptance. So when you are changing and coming from a place that you already have approval and acceptance, because you are a human being and your value is inherent, your worth is inherent, it isn't contingent on anything outside of you. And you start to see yourself through the lens of your gifts and see how your gifts are unique to you and are what allow you the type of success that you truly desire. And your gifts, this is different for everyone, but they are inherent in what allows you to have success without struggle, without sacrifice. So you may have heard this expression, the money is in your relationships. And a lot of times people say this from the context of networking, like, who's in your network? Who do you know? Who are your connections? But I'm saying this from the place of your actual relationships in your life, because the relationships in your life are what created that perception of you. That psychosocialization is dependent on relationships. Your relationships with your caregivers or parents, with your other relatives, with your teachers, with different leaders in the community, with religious leaders, with people that you admire. That all influenced how you perceive yourself and what you thought was possible for you, what you thought wasn't possible for you, how you decided the world worked based on those relationships. And so inherent in changing your identity is, like I mentioned, of course, rewiring your brain, connecting with your gifts, but it's also changing your relationships and understanding, the judgments that you picked up from people in your past are not your judgments, are not your reality. And once you see that, then you start to have different relationships. You start to have different conversations. You start to, value yourself in a way that you probably never have before. Because as children, a lot of times the value comes from other people, of course. Like, we're dependent on other people to feed us and to, put us in a house. And so it's learning how to source, again, that value from a very different place, from that inherent worth that you have as a human being, that you were born whole and complete, and that you have unique gifts that are designed specifically for you to be successful, to make a difference in this world and in the way that only you can. And as you start to change that identity and your relationships, you start to change how you show up in your business, the types of things that you are willing and eager to talk about versus before probably afraid to talk about in your marketing. How you show up on your lives, on your sales calls, in your coaching calls with people in your community, that you start to attract people that want to work with you, even if they don't even know what you do. I mean, this happened to me, it's happened to my clients. Like, for me, I was attending a workshop and someone came up and asked, to work with me. I didn't really even say much about what I did. It was really, short. Like, I just wasn't like its big pitch. And same with, one of my clients, like, she had people coming up to her, like, in parking lots. And this is what happens because you are operating from a very different place, from like almost a different, plane of consciousness, really. And that's actually what we're all here to do, is to elevate consciousness, to really move evolution forward. And of course, moving evolution forward is, being able to be, successful in your business and serving in the way that you're meant to serve. And that doesn't happen when you're in survival mode. So all of this, of course, starts with, your perception of yourself, your work, what you're here to do, the transformation that you facilitate for your clients. As you shift that, automatically that will start to shift your relationships. You start to have different conversations. Like with one of my clients, we just shifted her relationship with her husband, and it changed the way she communicated in her lives and in her marketing, and she got sales right away after not having sales for a really long time. This works. And it's so much, it's so much more than a quick fix. This isn't, follow these 5 steps and get on your merry way. This is for sustainable success, sustainable growth. So you continue to not just, increase your income, but continue to increase your income because you're continuing to evolve and serve at higher levels and experience higher levels of power and expression. So, friends, if you are tired of being on that cycle of just feeling like you're always chasing sales, you're always, analyzing and changing your strategy and just tired and burned out and exhausted and maybe even uninspired and just want different. You want something different. You want to be operating differently. You want your business model to change. You want different clients. You want, sales to come in a way that is fun and not, sacrifice. If that is something that you are desiring, then I encourage you to book a call for me. We will do a 30-minute deep reveal where I will show you exactly where this is coming from, this cycle of being stuck, and what needs to happen to change it by helping you see your gifts in a different way. Because a lot of times we might think these are our gifts, but we don't see them ourselves. We need an outside perspective to really show us, what those gifts are and how they're connected to what we're here to do and how that connects to, of course, sales. Cool? Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing this. All right, so if you have questions, let me know. And of course, leave comments and I'll come back and check, and I will actually just DM me. I won't put a link, just DM me, and then we can get on a call from there. Cool? All right, rock and roll. Thanks so much for watching. Leave your comments below and don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button and the notification bell if you want to hear about upcoming videos.